नारायण गोसाई महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जय। निखिल विष्णु विष्णुपाद अच्युतर तस्मात् श्रील भक्तिवेदांत वामन गोसाई महाराज की जय। निखिल विष्णु विष्णुपाद अच्युतर तस्मात् श्रील भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज की जय। निखिल विष्णु विष्णुपाद अच्युतर तस्मात् श्रील भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोसाई महाराज की जय। निखिल विष्णु विष्णुपाद अच्युतर तस्मात् श्रील भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्य प्रविष्ट महाभागवत श्री गोक्षरस बाबूजी महाराज की जय। नित्य प्रविष्ट श्री सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। नित्य प्रविष्ट वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबूजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूप गौरी गुरु वर्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्ट दास रघुनाथ शार गोसाई प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर प्रसाद वृंद की जय। नाम अक्षय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुर वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदाति गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय। श्री मोहन देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योग माय की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्रीनिताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ओं विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदांत नारायणीति नामिने। नमो ओं विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतिशे नमः। गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकाय तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तम् अनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुस्तं सर्वभूतहृदयमुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। शृण्वतां स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्थो ह्यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सतम्। नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवद्गीताश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। तवैवास्मि तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नायमां चरणान्तिकम्। भक्त्या विहीना अपराधलक्षय क्षिप्ताष्टकामादितराङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि तं शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्। भज श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Dandavat pranams Madhavi Didi, Gargaraji, Raseshwari Mataji, and everybody else who's watching. Pajumna Prabhu, Mantramurti Mataji, and I'm sure Rup Manjari will be coming in soon, and Indira Mataji, and Ganga Didi, and others also. Dandavat pranams. So in the previous chapter, we read how Nārada and Angira, they instruct King Citraketu. They say, relationships in this world are not factual. The union and separation of the jivas are due to the force of time. The Lord's Maya potency ordains fertility and therefore parenthood. Material relationships do not exist in all three phases of time. The Lord, though unattached, creates, maintains, and destroys like a child playing. Parents produce the body, but not the soul. Designations are imaginary. So these are the different points that they mentioned. Of course, they went into a lot more detail. Just reading here the gist of the points. Then Citraketu, he glorifies Nārada and Angira and requests knowledge. He says, having become enlightened, Citraketu asks their identity. He says Vaishnavas wander to benefit materialists, and then he cites examples of such persons. Like he gives the names of different people who've done this. He says, please ignite the torch of knowledge in me. Then Nārada and Angira, they reveal, first Angira reveals his and Nārada's identity and their purpose in relieving Citraketu from false lamentation. And then Angira says, I did not give you the topmost knowledge, paramagyanam, earlier, because you were absorbed in material things, which are like a Gandharva city, just an imaginary city in the sky. It's not. You're so absorbed in the false that you weren't ready to hear this paramagyanam, supreme knowledge, topmost secret knowledge. So then he says, the mind is the cause of actions. The body is the source of all miseries. Understand the real position of the soul. Then Nārada initiates Citraketu with the mantra to see Lord Sankarshan. And then, I'm just going to read from here now. We read 20 verses yesterday, so I'll just read. Then Nārada brought the dead son into the vision of the lamenting relatives by his mystic power, seeing that it was difficult to stop their illusion. And then he spoke as follows. Nārada says, O living entity, just see your father and mother. All your friends and relatives are overwhelmed with grief because of your passing away. Re-enter your body and enjoy the remainder of your life, surrounded by your friends and relatives. Accept the royal throne and all the opulences of your father. Note, Nārada actually himself spoke through the sun to enlighten them. Then the Jiva speaks. So now the boy is speaking. Well, the Jiva is speaking in the boy. In which birth were these In which birth were these persons my father and mother? I have been wandering by my karma in the wombs of demigods, animals, and humans. No one is permanently related in this material world. In successive births, people become friends, relatives, enemies, or false friends, and are well-wishing, indifferent to, or envious of one another. Link. If an enemy becomes one's son, how does affection arise for that person as a dear relative? An example is illustrated now. The jiva is created like a commodity. Just as gold and other commodities pass among people in due course of transactions, the jiva wanders into various bodies with various fathers and mothers. Note, when someone's wealth falls into the hands of the enemy, the money becomes the enemy's friend. Therefore, the money belongs to neither of them. Similarly, the jiva is a completely separate identity from his so-called father and mother. By the laws of nature, the jiva is forced to enter the semen of a father and be injected into the womb of a mother. Relationships, sambandha, introduce possessiveness, mamatvam. Both are temporary, both are anitya. Even in this life, it is seen that relationships are temporary. As long as the relationship lasts, one has possessiveness of an object. Otherwise, it is lost like affinity to an animal is lost after it is sold to another person. Relation is only for the body. The jiva who has entered a body is eternal, nitya, and without any material identity, nirahamkrita. As long as the jiva stays in his body, he identifies himself as the son of a certain father and mother. And the qualities of the Lord and the jiva. So the Lord and the jiva are both eternal and imperishable, and they're both subtle beyond perception. You can't see them with material eyes. But, so that's how they are the same. But now let's see how the Lord and the jiva are different. The Lord is a shelter of everything. He creates the universe through the gunas of his material maya, whereas the jiva is prone to be illusioned by maya and creates various bodies for himself according to his desires. The Lord is self-manifesting, whereas the jiva is not. The Lord, no one is dear to the Lord, nor is anyone unfavorable to the Lord. But the jiva has no distinctions of dear or not dear, or what's one's own or other, what's his own or what's another's property, I guess. Anyways, and then the Lord is one without a second. He is the witness of all jivas with various types of intelligence. Whereas the jiva acts in terms of friend and enemy in relation to others. And there's a footnote here. It says the Supreme Lord is not affected by duality, but the living entity is. To become completely neutral and indifferent to material activities, the living entity should simply seek shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Neutral Person. So now the qualities of the Lord. The Supreme Lord does not accept happiness, distress, or the results of fruitive actions. He is situated as if neutral, witnessing the good and bad actions of the jiva. Now the child's funeral rites and the queen's atonement. After the jiva had spoken in this way and left, Citraketu and all others were astonished. Thus they cut off their shackles of affection and gave up their lamentation. After the relatives had performed the funeral ceremonies, they gave up the affection that leads to illusion, lamentation, fear, and pain, and which is difficult to give up. Krutaduti's co-wives were ashamed and lost their bodily lusters. While lamenting, they remembered the instructions of Angira and gave up their ambition to bear children. They atoned for the killing of the child on the bank of the Yamuna river as directed by the Brahmins. Thus enlightened by the instructions of Angira and Nārada, King Citraketu came out of the dark well of family life, like an elephant emerges from mud. After bathing in the Yamuna and offering oblations, controlling his senses and mind, Citraketu then offered his respects to Angira and Nārada. Being pleased with Citraketu, who was a self-controlled devotee and surrendered soul, Nārada spoke the following instructions. So first he offers his obeisances to the Chaturvyuha. He says, Om Namastubhyam Bhagavate Vasudevaya Dhimahi Prajumnaya Niruddhaya Nama Sankarshanaya Cha. And then he explains the differences between the Lord and the jiva, more differences. So here are some qualities of the Lord. The Lord is the Lord's form is full of knowledge, whereas the jiva is covered with ignorance. The Lord is full of transcendental bliss, whereas the jiva's form consists of 5 material elements. The Lord is self-sufficient and most peaceful, whereas the jiva is enjoying material sense objects and therefore always anxious. This is, of course, is referring to the bound Jiva. The Lord is not attached to the material world. He's turned away from duality. His vision is turned away from duality. Whereas the Jiva is attached to the material world. The Lord is one without a second. No part of his body is different from any other part. So he can see with his hands, he can eat with his eyes, he can, all his bodily parts can perform all the other functions of the other bodily parts. Whereas the Jiva's bodies have different parts with limited functions. The Lord perceives personal bliss and is always transcendental to the waves of material nature, whereas the Jiva is in the midst of the waves of attraction and hatred. The Lord is the supreme controller of the senses, whereas the Jiva is controlled by his senses. The Lord has unlimited expansions, whereas the Jiva is limited to only one form or some limited forms. Srila Prabhupada said 8 forms, right? So now we're going to read about the various features of the Lord, and then Citraketu attains the Lord's darshan. What time is it? Oh my God, it's 7:20. Dandavat pranams Ganga Didi and Rup Manjari Didi. No problem, Rup Manjari, you're not late, just in time. I forgot to prepare this, 1 second. Chapter 16, right? Yes. So verse 21. Let's go there. All right. Let's try reading it like this. Just here, I got an app that can make everything dark. Although I don't like this font as much. I like having more space in between the words. But anyways, let's just try it. Oh, shoot. Okay. Varchasyuparate prapya ya eko manasa saha anama rupaschinmatra sovyana sarasatpara. The words and mind of the conditioned soul cannot approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For material names and forms are not applicable to the Lord, who is entirely spiritual, beyond the conception of gross and subtle forms. The impersonal Brahman is another of his forms. May he, by his pleasure, protect us. So this is Nārada's glorification of the Lord. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Actually, let me make this one size smaller. Okay. The impersonal Brahman, which is the effulgence of the Lord, is described in this verse. Yasmin idam yataschedam tishtyatapyeti jayate mrinmayesh viha mrijatis tasmaite brahmane namah. As pots made completely of earth are situated on the earth after being created and are transformed into earth again when broken, this cosmic manifestation is caused by the Supreme Brahman, situated in the Supreme Brahman, and annihilated in the same Supreme Brahman. Therefore, since the Supreme Lord is the cause of Brahman, let us offer him our respectful obeisances. Purport. The Supreme Lord is the cause of the cosmic manifestation. He maintains it after creation, and after annihilation, the Lord is the reservoir of everything. We're reading up to verse 37. Okay. Yanna sprishantina vidurmano buddhindriyasava antarbahishchavitatam vyomavat tannatosmyaham. The Supreme Brahman emanates from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and expands like the sky. Although untouched by anything material, it exists within and without. Nonetheless, the mind, intelligence, senses, and living force can neither touch him nor know him. I offer unto him my respectful obeisances. Tehendriya prana mano diomi yaramsha vidha pracharanti karmashu naivan yada loham iva prataptam staneshu tadrashtra padeshameti. As iron has the power to burn when made red hot in association of fire, so the body, senses, living force, mind, and intelligence, although merely lumps of matter, can function in their activities when infused with a particle of consciousness by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As iron cannot burn unless heated by fire, the bodily senses cannot act unless favored by the Supreme Brahma. Purport. Red-hot iron can burn, but it cannot burn the original fire. Therefore, the consciousness of the small particle of Brahman is fully dependent on the power of the Supreme Brahman. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Mata smritir jnanam apahonam cha. That's Bhagavad Gita 15:15. From me, the conditioned soul receives memory, knowledge, and forgetfulness. The power for activities comes from the Supreme Lord, and when the Lord withdraws this power, the conditioned soul no longer has energy with which to act through his various senses. The body includes 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, 5 active senses, and the mind. But actually, these are merely lumps of matter. For example, the brain is nothing but matter, but when electrified by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the brain can act just as iron can burn when made red hot by the influence of fire. The brain can act while we are awake or even while we are dreaming, but when we are fast asleep or unconscious, the brain is inactive. Since the brain is a lump of matter, it does not have independent power with which to act. It can act only when favored by the influence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Brahman or Parabrahman. This is the way to understand how the Supreme Brahman, Krishna, is present everywhere, just as the sunshine is present because of the sun god in the sun globe. The Supreme Lord is called Rishikesh. He is the only conductor of the senses. Unless empowered by his energy, our senses cannot act. In other words, he is the only seer, the only worker, the only listener, and the only active principle, our Supreme Controller. I actually prefer, this is easy on the eyes, I think. Actually, wait, I want to test something out. This is a new app where you can, what's dark gray look like? Oh shoot, we lost a spot. Oh no. Hey, it's the same. Oh, it's midnight. Hey, these are all the same. Whatever. Okay, I'm just going to try it like this. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Mahapurushaya Mahanubhavaya Mahavibhuti Pataye Sakala Satvata Parivriddha Nikarakara Kamala Kurmalo Palalita Charanaravinda Yugala Parama Parameshtin Namaste. O Transcendental Lord, who are situated in the topmost planet of the spiritual world, your 2 lotus feet are always massaged by a multitude of the best devotees with their lotus bud hands. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, complete in 6 opulences. You are the Supreme Person mentioned in the Purusha Sukta prayers. You are the most perfect, self-realized master of all mystic power. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport. It is said that the Absolute Truth is one, but is manifested in different features as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. The previous verses described the Brahman and Paramatma features of the Absolute Truth. Now, this prayer is offered in Bhakti Yoga to the Absolute Supreme Person. The words used in this regard are Sakala Sattvata Parivriddha. The word Sattvata means devotees, and Sakala means all together. The devotees also have lotus feet. The devotees who also have lotus feet serve the lotus feet of the Lord with their lotus hands. The devotees may sometimes not be competent to serve the lotus feet of the Lord, and therefore the Lord is addressed as Parama Parameshtin. He is a supreme person, yet he is very kind to the devotees. No one is competent to serve the Lord, but even if a devotee is not competent, the merciful Lord accepts the humble attempt of the devotee. Shri Shuka Uvacha Bhaktayaitam Prapannaya Vedam Adisha Nārada Yayav Angirasa Sakam Dhamma Swayam Bhuvam Prabho. Sri Shukadev Goswami continued, Nārada, having become the spiritual master of Citraketu, instructed him fully in this prayer, because Citraketu was fully surrendered. O King Parikshit, Nārada then left with the great sage Angira for the topmost planet known as Brahmaloka. Purport. When Angira had first come to visit King Citraketu, he did not bring Nārada with him. However, after the death of Citraketu's son, Angira brought Nārada to instruct King Citraketu about Bhakti Yoga. The difference was that in the beginning, Citraketu was not in a temperament of renunciation, but after the death of his son, when he was overwhelmed with his great plight, he was awakened to the platform of renunciation by the instructions regarding the falsity of this material world and material possessions. It is only at this stage that Bhakti Yoga can be instructed. As long as one is attached to material enjoyment, Bhakti Yoga cannot be understood. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 2:44. Bhogaishvarya pasaktanam taya pahrita chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhi samadho na vidiyate. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination of devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. As long as one is very much attached to material enjoyment, one cannot concentrate his mind on the subject matter of devotional service. The Krishna consciousness movement is progressing successfully in the Western countries at the present moment because the youth in the West have reached the stage of vairagya, or renunciation. They are practically disgusted with material pleasure from material sources, and this has resulted in a population of hippies throughout the Western countries. Now, if these young people are instructed about Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, the instructions will certainly be effective. As soon as Citraketu understood the philosophy of Vairagya Vidya, the knowledge of renunciation, he could understand the process of Bhakti Yoga. In this regard, Srila Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has said, Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga Shikshatam Eka Purusha Purana, right? I think so. That's Madhya Lila 6:254, Chaitanya Charitamrita. Vairagya Vidya and Bhakti Yoga are parallel lines. One is essential for understanding the other. It is also said, Bhakti Pareshanu Bhava Viraktir Anyata Cha. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 11:242. When one gains realization of the Lord through bhakti, then virakti, detachment, automatically arises. Just like when you eat, your hunger automatically is dissipated. So, advancement in devotional service or Krishna consciousness is characterized by increasing renunciation of material enjoyment. Nārada Muni is the father of devotional service, and therefore, just to bestow causeless mercy upon King Citraketu, Angira brought Nārada Muni to instruct the king. These instructions were extremely effective. Anyone who follows in the footsteps of Nārada Muni is certainly a pure devotee. Citraketu stutang vidyam yata Nārada bhashitam dharayam asasaptaham abhaksha susamahita. Fasting and drinking only water, Citraketu for 1 week continuously chanted with great care and attention the mantra given by Nārada Muni. Tatta sa saptaratrante vidya dharyamanaya vidyadhara dipatyancha lebhe pratihatang ripa. O King Parikshit, after only a week of repeatedly practicing the mantra received from the spiritual master, Citraketu achieved the rule of the planet of the Vidyadharas as an immediate product of his spiritual advancement in knowledge. Purport. If a devotee, after being initiated, adheres rigidly to the instructions of the spiritual master, he is naturally endowed with the material opulences of Vidyadhara Adipatyam and similar posts as byproducts. A devotee need not practice yoga, karma, or jnana to achieve a successful result. Devotional service alone is competent to award a devotee all material power. A pure devotee, however, is never attached to material power, although he gets it very easily without personal endeavor. Citraketu received this side benefit of his devotional service, which he rigidly performed in accordance with the instructions of Nārada. Tata kati payaho bir vidyaye dhamano gati jagama devadevasya sheshasya charanantikam. Thereafter, within a very few days, by the influence of the mantra that Citraketu had practiced, his mind became increasingly enlightened in spiritual progress, and he attained shelter at the lotus feet of Anantadev. Purport. A devotee's ultimate achievement is to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord in any one of the planets in the spiritual sky. As a result of rigid execution of devotional service, a devotee receives all material opulences if these are required. Otherwise, the devotee is not interested in material opulences, nor does the Supreme Lord award them. When a devotee is actually engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, his apparently material opulences are not material. They are all spiritual. For example, if a devotee spends money to construct a beautiful and costly temple, the construction is not material, but spiritual. Nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchyate. A devotee's mind is never diverted to the material side of the temple. The bricks, stone, and wood used in the construction of the temple are spiritual, just as the deity, although made of stone, is not stone, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. The more one advances in spiritual consciousness, the more he can understand the elements of devotional service. Nothing in devotional service is material. Everything is spiritual. Consequently, a devotee is awarded so-called material opulence for spiritual advancement. This opulence is an aid to help the devotee advance towards the spiritual kingdom. Thus, Maharaj Citraketu remained in material opulence as a Vidyadhara Pati, master of the Vidyadharas, and by executing devotional service, he became perfect within a very few days and returned home back to Godhead, taking shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Shesh, Ananta. A karmi's material opulence and a devotee's material opulence are not on the same level. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam comments in this way. Anyantaram minam Vishnu upasyanya samipaga bhavet yogyataya tasya padang va prapnuyan nara. By worshipping Lord Vishnu, one can get whatever he desires. But a pure devotee never asks Lord Vishnu for any material profit. Instead, he serves Lord Vishnu without material desires and is therefore ultimately transferred to the spiritual kingdom. In this regard, Sri Viraraghavacharya comments, Yateshta gatir ityartha. By worshipping Vishnu, a devotee can get whatever he likes. Maharaj Citraketu wanted only to return home back to Godhead, and therefore he achieved success in that way. Mrinalagoram Shitivasanam Spurat Kiritakeyura Katitra Kankanam Prasanna Bhaktraruna Lochanam Vritam tadarshase deshvara mandalai prabhum. Sorry. Upon reaching the shelter of Lord Shish, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Citraketu saw that he was as white as the white fibers of a lotus flower. He was dressed in bluish garments and adorned with a brilliantly glittering helmet, armlets, belt, and bangles. His face was smiling, and his eyes were reddish. He was surrounded by such exalted, liberated persons as Sanat Kumar. Tad darśana dvasta samasta kilbisha swasta malanta karano bhyayan muni pravrida bhaktya pranayashulochana prahrishta roma namarati purusham. As soon as Maharaj Citraketu saw the Supreme Lord, he was cleansed of all material contamination and situated in his original Krishna consciousness, being completely purified. He became silent and grave, and because of love for the Lord, tears fell from his eyes, and his hairs stood on end. With great devotion and love, he offered his respectful obeisances unto the original personality of Godhead. Purport. The word tad darshana dvasta samasta kilvisha is very important in this verse. If one regularly sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the temple, one will gradually be disinfected of all material desires simply by visiting the temple and seeing the deity. When one is freed from all the results of sinful activities, one will be purified, and with a healthy mind, completely cleansed, he will increasingly make progress in Krishna consciousness. Sa uttama shloka padabja vishtaram premashuleshar upame hayan mohu premo parudha kila varna nirgamo naivashakatang prasamiditum chiram. With tears of love and affection, Citraketu repeatedly moistens the resting place of the Supreme Lord's lotus feet. Because his voice was choked in ecstasy, for a considerable time he was unable to offer any of the letters of the alphabet to offer to the Lord. He was unable to utter any of the letters of the alphabet to offer the Lord suitable prayers. Purport. All the letters of the alphabet and the words constructed of those letters are meant for offering prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Maharaj Citraketu had the opportunity to offer prayers to the Lord by composing nice verses from the letters of the alphabet, but because of his ecstasy, for a considerable time, he could not join those letters to offer prayers to the Lord. As stated in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 1.5.22, Idam hi pungsas tapasa shrutasya va shvishtasya suktasya cha buddhi dattayo avyachyutorta kavibhir nirupito yad uttama shloka gunanuvarnanam. If one has scientific, philosophical, political, economic, or any other abilities, and wants perfection in his knowledge, he should offer prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by composing first-class poetry or engaging his talents in the service of the Lord. Citraketu wanted to do this, but he was unable because of loving ecstasy. Therefore, he had to wait for a considerable time before he could offer prayers. Tata samadhaya mano manishaya babhasha etat pratilabdha bhagaso niyamya sarvendriya bahya vartanam jagar gurung satvatat shastra vigraham. Thereafter, by controlling his mind with his intelligence and thus restricting his senses from external engagements, he recovered suitable words with which to express his feelings. Thus he began offering prayers to the Lord, who is the personification of the Holy Scriptures, the Sattva Samhitas, like the Brahma Samhita and the Nārada Pancharatra, and who is the spiritual master of all. He offered his prayers as follows. Purport. One cannot offer prayers to the Lord with mundane words. One must become spiritually advanced by controlling the mind and senses. Then he can find suitable words to offer in prayers to the Lord. Quoting the following verse from the Padma Puran, Srila Sanatana Goswami forbids us to sing any song not sung by authorized devotees. Avaishnavo mukud girnan bhutam harikatam ritam shravanam naiva kartavyam sarpochishtam yatapaya. The words are songs of a person not fixed in Vaishnava behavior, not strictly following the rules and regulations and chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, should not be accepted by pure devotees. The word Sattvata Shastra Vigraham indicates that the Satchid Ananda body of the Lord can never be accepted to be made of Maya. Devotees do not offer prayers to the Lord in an imaginary form. The existence of the Lord's form is supported by all Vedic literature. So now we are going to be just reading the beginning of Citraketu's prayers to the Lord, and tomorrow we will finish it. Citraketur vacha ajita jita samana matibi sadhu virbhavan jitatmabir bhavata vijitastepi cha bhajatam akamatmanam ya atmadoti karuna. Citraketu said, O unconquerable Lord, although you cannot be conquered by anyone, you are certainly conquered by devotees who have control of the mind and senses. They can keep you under their control because you are causelessly merciful to devotees who desire no material profit from you. Indeed, you give yourself to them, and because of this, you have full control over your devotees. Purport. The Lord and the devotees both conquer. The Lord is conquered by the devotees, and the devotees are conquered by the Lord. Because of being conquered by one another, they both derive transcendental bliss from their relationship. The highest perfection of this mutual conquering is exhibited by Krishna and the gopis. The gopis conquered Krishna, and Krishna conquered the gopis. Thus, whenever Krishna played his flute, he conquered the minds of the gopis, and without seeing the gopis, Krishna could not be happy. Other transcendentalists, such as jnanis and yogis, cannot conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only pure devotees can conquer him. Pure devotees are described as samamati, which means that they never deviate from devotional service under any circumstances. It is not that devotees worship the Supreme Lord only when happy. They worship him even when in distress. Happiness and distress do not hamper the process of devotional service. Therefore, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam says that devotional service is ahaituki apratihata. It's unmotivated and uninterrupted. When a devotee offers devotional service to the Lord without any motive, anyabhilashita shunyam, his service cannot be hampered by any material condition. It's apratihata. Thus, a devotee who offers service in all conditions of life can conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A special distinction between devotees and the other transcendentalists, namely the jnanis and yogis, is that jnanis and yogis artificially try to become one with the Supreme, whereas devotees never aspire for such an impossible accomplishment. Devotees know that their position is to be eternally servants of the Supreme Lord and never to be one with him. Therefore, they are called samamati, or jitatma. They detest oneness with the Supreme. They have no lusty desires for oneness. Instead, their desire is to be freed from all material hankering. Therefore, they are called nishkam. They are desireless. A living entity cannot exist without desires, but desires that can never be fulfilled are called kama, or lusty desires. Kamaistaster rita jnana. Bhagavad Gita 7:20. Because of lusty desires, non-devotees are deprived of their intelligence. Thus, they are unable to conquer the Supreme Lord, whereas devotees, being freed from such unreasonable desires, can conquer the Lord. Such devotees are also conquered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because they are pure, being free from all material desires, they are fully surrendered to the Supreme Lord, and therefore the Lord conquers them. Such devotees never aspire for liberation. They simply desire to serve the lotus feet of the Lord. Because they serve the Lord without desires for remuneration, they can conquer the mercy of the Lord. The Lord is by nature very merciful, and when he sees that his servant is working without desires for material profit, naturally he is conquered. Devotees are always engaged in service. Savai mana Krishna padara vindayor, vachangsi vaikunta gunanu varnane. All the activities of their senses are engaged in the service of the Lord. Because of such devotion, the Lord gives himself to his devotees as if they could use him for any purpose they might desire. Of course, devotees have no purpose other than to serve. When a devotee fully surrenders and has no aspiration for material profit, the Lord certainly gives him all opportunities for service. This is the position of the Lord when conquered by his devotees. Tava vibhava kalu bhagavan jagadudaya sthiti layadini vishvasrijaste kshama sanshas whatever. Tatra mrisha spardhanti pritag adhimatya. This is a really weird meter. Vishvasrijaste ting shamshas. So that was 7 syllables, and then the next line is Tatra Mrisha Spardhanti Pritag Abhimatya. Yeah, they're all different. Okay. My dear Lord, this cosmic manifestation and its creation, maintenance, and annihilation are all but your opulences. Since Lord Brahma and the other creators are nothing but small portions of a portion of you, their partial power to create does not make them God, Ishwar. Their consciousness of themselves as separate lords is therefore merely false prestige. It is not valid. Purport. A devotee who has fully surrendered to the lotus feet of the Lord knows very well that the creative energy of the living entities, from Lord Brahma down to the small ant, exists because the living entities are part and parcel of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita 15:7, the Lord says, Mamai Vangsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. The living entities are nothing but very small portions of the Supreme Spirit, like sparks of a fire. Because they are part of the Supreme, they have a creative quality in a very minute quantity. The so-called scientists of the modern materialistic world are proud because they have created modern facilities like great airplanes. But the credit for creating the airplanes should go to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not to the scientists who have invented or created the so-called wonderful products. The first consideration is the intelligence of the scientist. One must be elevated by the dictation of the Supreme Lord, who says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Mata smritir jnanam apohonam cha. From me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Because the Supreme Lord, as Supersoul, sits within the core of every living entity's heart, the dictation by which one advances in scientific knowledge or creates faculties comes from him. The dictation by which one advances or creative faculties comes from him. Yes. Furthermore, the ingredients to manufacture wonderful machines like airplanes are also supplied by the Lord, not by the scientists. Before the airplane was created, its ingredients already existed, having been caused by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But when the manifested creation of the airplane is ruined, the remaining debris is a problem for the so-called creators. Another example is that the West is creating many automobiles. The ingredients for these cars are supplied, of course, by the Supreme Lord, and the intelligence for the so-called creation is also supplied by the Lord. Ultimately, when the cars are demolished, the so-called creators are faced with the problem of what to do with their ingredients. The actual creator, the original creator, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only in the interim does someone create something with the intelligence supplied by the Lord, and later, the creation again becomes a problem. Therefore, the so-called creator is not to be credited with the act of creation. The only credit goes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is rightly stated herein that the creation for all the opulences of creation, maintenance, and annihilation belongs to the Supreme Lord, not to the living entities. Paramanu parama mahatos tam adyantantara tara vidura adavante picha sattvanam yadhruvam tar evantaralepi. You exist in the beginning, middle, and end of everything, from the most minute particle of the cosmic manifestation, the atom, to the gigantic universes and total material energy. Nonetheless, you are eternal, having no beginning, end, or middle. You are perceived to exist in these three phases, and thus you are permanent. When the cosmic manifestation does not exist, you exist as the original potency. Purport. The Brahma Samhita 533 says, Advaitama Chutamanadamanantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedeshu Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, Krishna, who is the original person, absolute, infallible, without beginning, although expanded into unlimited form. And although expanded into unlimited forms, he is still the same original, the oldest, and he is without beginning, although expanded into unlimited forms. Still the same original, the oldest, and the person always appearing as a fresh youth. Okay. Such eternal, blissful, all-knowing forms of the Lord cannot be understood even by the best Vedic scholars, but they are always manifest to pure, unalloyed devotees. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has no cause, for he is the cause of everything. The Lord is beyond the workings of cause and effect. He is eternally existing. In another verse, the Brahma Samhita says, Andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam. The Lord exists within the gigantic universe and within the atom. The descent of the Lord into the atom and the universe indicates that without his presence, nothing could factually exist. Scientists say that water is a combination of hydrogen and oxygen, but when they see a vast ocean, they are puzzled about where such a quantity of hydrogen and oxygen could have come from. They think that everything evolved from chemicals, but where did the chemicals come from? They do not know. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes, he can produce immense quantities of chemicals to create a situation for chemical evolution. We actually see that chemicals are produced from living entities. For example, a lemon tree produces many tons of citric acid. The citric acid is not the cause of the tree. Rather, the tree is the cause of the acid. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of everything. He is the cause of the tree that produces the citric acid, bijang mam sarvabhutanam. Devotees can see that the original potencies causing the cosmic manifestation are not in chemicals, but in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for he is the cause of the chemicals. Everything is caused or manifested by the energy of the Supreme Lord, and when everything is annihilated or dissolved, the original potency enters the body of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, this verse says, Adavante pi sattvanam yad dhruvam tad evantarale pi. The word dhruvam means permanent. The permanent reality is Krishna, not this cosmic manifestation. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Aham adir hi devanam and matta sarvam pravartate. Krishna is the original cause of everything. Arjuna recognized Lord Krishna as the original person, Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Adidevam Ajam Vibhum. And the Brahma Samhita describes him as also describes him as the original person. Govindam Adi Purusham. He is the cause of all causes, whether at the beginning, at the end, or in the middle. How long is this purport? Okay, we're ending with this verse here. How much time is left? Oh my God, we have 1 more minute. Kshittadivir eshakilavrita saptavir dasha gunottarar andakosha yatra patatanukalpa sahanda kotivistaranta ananta. Every universe is covered by 7 layers: earth, water, fire, air, sky, the total energy, and false ego, each 10 times greater than the previous one. There are innumerable universes besides this one, and although they are unlimitedly large, they move about like atoms in you. Therefore, you are called unlimited, Ananta. Purport. The Brahma Samhita 548 says, Yasaikani Vashita Kalamatavalamvya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagarandanata Vishnur Mahanta Iha Yasya Kala Vishesha Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. The origin of the material creation is Mahavishnu, who lies in the causal ocean. While he sleeps in that ocean, millions of universes are generated as he exhales, and they are all annihilated when he inhales. This Mahavishnu is a plenary portion of Vishnu, Govinda, Yasya Kala Vishesha. The word Kala refers to a plenary portion of a plenary portion. From Krishna, or Govinda, comes Balaram. From Balaram comes Sankarshan. From Sankarshan, Narayan. From Narayan, the second Sankarshan. From the second Sankarshan, Mahavishnu. From Mahavishnu, Garbhadakshay Vishnu. And from Garbhadakshay Vishnu, Kshiradakshay Vishnu. Kshiradakshay Vishnu controls every universe. This gives an idea of the meaning of Ananta, unlimited. What is to be said of the unlimited potency and existence of the Lord? This verse describes the coverings of the universe. Saptavir dasha gunatarar andakosha. The first covering is, the second is water. The third is fire. The fourth is air. The fifth is sky. The sixth is the total material energy. And the seventh is the false ego. Beginning with the covering of each covering is 10 times greater than the previous one. Thus, we can only imagine how great each universe is. And there are many millions of universes, as confirmed by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita 10:42. Atava bahunaitena kim gyatena tavarjuna vishtabhyaham idam kartsnam ekankshena sito jagat. But what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. The entire material world manifests only 1/4 of the Supreme Lord's energy. Therefore, he is called Ananta. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Agor Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Here, let's look at some pictures. This is, okay, so Srila Prabhupada, and then Angira and Nārada Rishi, there's King Citraketu, and there's the sun. That's Nārada brought the sun back to life, and then the Jiva spoke through the sun. So that's what's going on there. Now, here's King Citraketu offering prayers to Lord Sankarshan. And there's the 4 Kumaras. Remember in the beginning it said that Sankarshan is surrounded by the 4 Kumaras. Right. Jai Shishi Guru Gauranga Gandhara Vikagiri Dhari Shri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju ki jai. Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatar Shatashmad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Gosai Maharaj Shila Gurudev ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatar Shatashmad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatar Shatashmad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatar Shatashmad Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatar Shatashmad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Prabhupada ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Mahabhagavat Srila Goksharas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupano Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dashraghunath Sharda Gosai Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai. Nam Achay Shri Hari Ras Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Braja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj ki jai. Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund ki jai. Shri Manu Devi Ganga Devi ki jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya ki jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Samagat Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Citraketu Maharaj ki jai. Shri Nārada Rishi ki jai. Shri Angira Rishi ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Shri Lord Sankarshan ki jai. Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyashta Kripa Sindhubhyaiva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandava pranams, dear devotees. Hare Krishna. See you all tomorrow.